Good evening. Thanks for being here tonight. We're super excited to talk with you about some of the changes that we are looking to implement for next school year. In fact, a lot of what we talk about tonight is going to be implemented starting with our summer program. So appreciate you taking time out of your evening to be here. So let's get started. So just a quick overview of what we will discuss tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about our current reality that we're living here in North Fond du Lac, have a little bit of a history review, and then we will start talking about the expectations for next year. And then we will have a guest speaker here that will talk about our program that we are going to start implementing this summer, and we'll go through next school year, and then we'll wrap up by talking about next steps. So let's get the party started. So I think it's obvious to our community that there is a gap between North Fond du Lac athletics and our opponents that we face. We are not as competitive as we could be. Our opponents are stronger, faster, more explosive. We can't keep up. Oftentimes we see teams have a fairly strong first half, and then the second half just fizzles out. We can't close it. And so we're going to talk about some potential solutions to help close that gap and start making North Fond du Lac a competitor in our conference and beyond. So let's talk about the current reality that I have seen this first year here in North Fond du Lac, and that is this losing mentality. One thing is obvious: participation in athletics in North Fond du Lac is down. We can't field 3 levels, freshman, JV, and varsity in all our sports. We struggle in certain areas to even have enough to run a varsity team. And that's a dangerous spot to be in. And we want to improve those numbers, but when I ask students, why aren't you participating in a sport? The response I get is, I don't want to play for a losing team. If I go out for that sport, I know I'm probably not even going to win a game the entire season. We've had some of our seniors that graduated last week that have only won 2 games in their entire sports career while here at North Fond du Lac. 2 games over 4 years. So students have this mentality that we're not going to win. And then the other thing I notice with talking with coaches as we go into the tournament series and talk about playoffs is that there is low energy with our players. I've heard it from coaches that my players want to just give up. They don't even want to play in the first round. They're going to go in and purposely lose because they know they're not going to make it very far. And that is scary, and that is a mindset that we need to shift. But we got to give them some tools and resources in order to start making that shift happen. So I'm going to give you a minute. These are the stats for the last 10 years for North Fond du Lac athletics. And again, track, cross country, golf, since those are more individualized sports, those records aren't included. But take a look at those records for a second. I don't know about you, but when I looked at those numbers, I got a sick feeling in my stomach. I don't think anyone sitting here in this room is happy with what they see. We have one team that's above 500. That team does do something differently than the other teams. I'll talk a little bit more about that later and why their record might be a little bit better. But I think everyone's in agreement here. We're not satisfied with that. How many of you have been around in this community long enough to remember back when North Fond du Lac had strong athletics You remember when we were being successful, you remember going to state. Anybody been around here that long to know what it can be like, right? You want that excitement back, right? You want that for your students in their athletic experience here in North Fond du Lac. And if we don't do something different, those records are going to stay the same. Because the same thing has been happening for years. How many of you think that although those are our records, we recognize that, believe that there is potential on those teams to do better? We have talented kids, but there are some missing components to their programming that is not setting them up for success. So we can do something about it. And the first thing that we have to do is just recognize that is our current reality. I'm going to own that. As a district, as coaches, as players, as family members that support student athletes, we need to own that collectively, that that's where we're at. And once we do that, we can start taking some steps to make a change. The biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. We have a tremendous opportunity before us that we can seize if we truly dive in and work together, that we can right this ship and start being part of a change that changes the trajectory of North Fond du Lac athletics. Because one thing is certain, we could keep doing what we've been doing for years, what my predecessors have done, but if we do that, the results are going to be the same. Less and less students are going to participate. We're going to continue to have losing records. And I know it's not all about winning, but it sure would be nice to have more wins, right? You would like to know that when our students go out on the court or the field, that they can be a competitor and we're not getting blown out of the water by 30, 40 points. We can do better. So if that's the past and that's where we're at, what can we do about it? So one of the things that I've been looking at this year as I've watched all the seasons play out, having conversations with our coaches in other districts, talking with ADs within the Flyweight Conference and ADs across the state of Wisconsin, I'm asking, what are you doing to the most successful programs? What are you doing? And one of the things that keeps popping up over and over with the most successful schools is they have a strong strength and conditioning program. That right now is a missing piece here in North Fond du Lac. It's not a priority. It hasn't been a priority. It's like happenstance if students happen to go into the weight room and complete a workout, or by chance, maybe some of our student athletes are taking a strength and conditioning class. But ironically, most of our students in those classes, they're not even athletes on our team. And so we need to make strength and conditioning a priority. So we're owning where we're at. Now we need to have the courage to grow. And that's where I'm going to need the coaches that are in this room, the parents that are in this room. We need to collectively have the courage to grow so that we can move the needle forward. And many of you are probably aware, I did meet with students today during our Oriole time, both middle school and high school, so they got the same message earlier today. So it's a new era, and I'm going to be setting a new expectation for our student athletes going forward. And then once I lay the foundation of that expectation, I'm going to talk to you about how we're going to support students in meeting that expectation. So all athletes, when they are in season, will have to complete a minimum of 2 strength and conditioning workouts each week. So when they are in season, a minimum of 2 workouts each week. Now the question's going to come up, what if my student athlete doesn't complete the minimum 2 workouts? If he or she does not complete the minimum of 2 workouts, that athlete will not be eligible to compete in the next week's events. They will be riding the bench, sitting on the sidelines. And so if that is the expectation, what are we going to do to support students to make sure everyone has access to get these workouts in? We have some options. For our high school students, strongly encourage that they sign up for a strength and conditioning class. I know coaches have been well aware of this expectation coming. They've been talking to athletes. We've seen a dramatic increase in the number of students that are making requests, which is great. We would love to see all of our student athletes, if they're able to, take a class, because then it's automatically just done during your school day. Now, for those that might not be able to make that work, we will be offering by teams, team workouts. Coaches will be scheduling that in season for their teams so that there's opportunities for all teams to be able to go in and do a workout together. The third option is during our Oriole time, so our last block of time at the end of the day, we will offer strength and conditioning sessions that students can sign up for. So there'll be 4 additional days, Tuesday through Friday, where students can sign up to go complete their workouts. So if that's the in-season requirement, what about the out-of-season? Well, as a director of activities here, I can put forth all the mandates I want for in-season. I can't necessarily require out-of-season workouts. But I'm going to highly, highly encourage that, as will our coaches. It's really important for our student athletes to maintain their strength and continue to improve outside of season, especially if they're not a multi-sport athlete. I mean, it's great if they're going to be a multi-sport athlete because they're constantly going to be conditioning and working out. But if they're not, they need to maintain that strength, because if they don't, they're going to lose it. They're going to lose the momentum they're gaining. So it's really going to be important that they continue and just make this part of their healthy lifestyle. Now, for those that aren't doing off-season workouts, they are not going to be given an advantage going out for their next season. Because the students that are, they're going to get stronger, they're going to get faster, they're going to get more explosive. And coaches will make playing time decisions based on students that are most prepared to play. So it's going to be really important that we just make this part of what we do. If you look at the schools that are most successful athletically, those are the students that are working out all the time. It's part of what they do. And another thing to consider, we know that if we want strong academics, because I think everyone would agree with me, we want our kids to be academically sound to be ready to go into the world, right? Whether it's college bound or career ready. Schools that have the most successful athletic programs also do better academically. When athletics are poor, academics are down too. So if we want to continue to drive the needle forward for academics here in North Fond du Lac, we have to get our athletic programming in line too, because the two go together. So if that is the expectation, what are we doing as a district to make sure that our students are going to be able to meet the expectation? So one of the things that we're doing is we're at Horace Mann, we are looking at our course offerings, revamping our course offerings. We will be making some major adjustments into that for the 25-26 school year. We are making some tweaks to next school year to better meet the needs of our student athletes that are taking strength and conditioning. So we're doing that right now. The other part is making sure we are revamping our summer programming and making sure that we next year are looking at how do we offer even open weight rooms for the kids that might want to do an occasional early morning workout because they have other commitments in the evening like work. Those are some things that we're looking at. How do we include that to make sure whoever you are as a student, there's a time for you to get your workouts in. And the other important piece is the district is investing in an outside resource to come in and help us with our strength and conditioning program to raise it up so that we are giving our students the very best. And we'll talk more about that programming coming up here shortly. And so with that, the district has partnered with Sports Advantage. And tonight we're really fortunate to have Brian Bott here. He is the owner and day-to-day operational manager of Sports Advantage. He has a coaching background. He has a strength and conditioning coaching background at the university level. He was with the Wisconsin Badgers with their strength and conditioning programming for years. He is now working with schools across Wisconsin that are changing the trajectory of their athletic programming. This is a company that has success, and we're super excited to be working with Sports Advantage because we think this is going to be a game changer for North Fond du Lac. So with that, I'm going to introduce Brian Bott, and he's going to share a little bit about his programming and what he's going to do for North Fond du Lac.
Appreciate everybody coming out. Want to just give you a little brief background on myself and Sports Advantage, so you kind of understand how the consulting portion of what we do came about. Like Jillian said, I was a strength coach at the University of North Dakota for 2 years. Got my master's degree there. I actually played baseball at Oshkosh in the 90s. We were national champs in '94, and then went to North Dakota. Got my master's degree. Was very fortunate there to work with almost every sport for 18 months as a grad student, and then got my dream job, essentially. Got hired on at Wisconsin right after Ron Dane's last Rose Bowl, and was there for 13 years. Was able to work with the softball team as well as the football team. And when Coach Bielema left to go to Arkansas, at that point I was going through a divorce, and I had 3 boys of my own, and had to make a family decision. So decided after about 5 months of Gary Anderson running the program in a different direction than I was used to, I stepped away and started Sports Advantage. I didn't know anything about business, but I knew I could train athletes, and I knew I wanted to work with athletes. And so that was 2014 when we opened our first location. We now have 7 locations across the state of Wisconsin. We've added Joe Thomas, Ryan Croy, Joe Thomas, Hall of Famer, Joe Thomas as partners, and as well as Alec Ingold, Brian Butch, and some other former Badgers as business partners. And our mission is to impact the state of Wisconsin. We don't do things outside of the state. We want to impact coaches, athletes, families in the state of Wisconsin and give back as much as we can. And so as we were opening gyms, COVID hit, right? And your kids had to go through a really weird scenario with COVID and whatnot. And it gave us an opportunity to look at how we could impact more athletes in schools and things like that. So that's when we piloted our consulting idea. And so we piloted it with Bayport, De Pere, and Boston. So 3 schools, obviously different sizes, different demographics, things like that. And we wanted to see if our systems could work in scenarios where you have 40 squat racks like Bayport does, and 5 like Boston does, and everything in between. And as we started going through that year, we realized that this is something that we could really impact schools with and impact coaches with. But we didn't want to do the same thing as what everybody else was doing. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with BFS, Bigger, Faster, Stronger, right? They send a program out, the coaches get it, they run the program, everybody gets the same thing. We wanted to take our systems, use that model, but make it specific to the school we were working with. So what North Fond du Lac will get will basically be what they have the ability to run within our systems, what the coaches can run, size of the weight room, size of the groups, whether it's in school, out of school, things like that. The second thing we wanted to look at was how could we provide a resource for the coaches, okay? Because the coaches' main thing is the sport they coach. And I understand because I've talked to hundreds, probably thousands of parents of their thoughts of high school strength training and things like that. So we wanted to provide education for the coaches as well. Not just give a program, we're not just handing a program to the school. All right? So we came up with what's called the Coach's Edge. And it basically has every exercise, every sprint drill, every agility drill that could possibly be run, so the coaches have access to it so they understand what it should look like, how they should coach it. Which is great, but we also had to educate on the why. So the third kind of part of our triangle is every month we do an educational Zoom call, virtual call that we record, put in the Coach's Edge for the coaches to get educated. It's essentially like them going to their own seminar every month to learn on a topic of training. Tomorrow, all of your kids have the ability to watch a webinar from Tony Castillo. He's a licensed nutritionist, used to work for the Blue Jays on nutrition training. So we provide all the information in there to try and make the coaches better. So we're educating the coaches as well. So as we started doing this, we found that there was a definite need for this. And so that is really how the consulting program is going to benefit the school. Our philosophy on training is the next thing. We use what's called the conjugate method, okay? The conjugate method is basically taking max effort training, which is training to get stronger, dynamic training, training to be more explosive and faster, and combining it into a system for athletes, okay? So, number one goal, okay, for your athletes is to get them stronger. Stronger athletes get hurt less, and they recover from injuries quicker, okay? But we don't just max out, we don't just lift heavy every single day. There's a couple days that they're going to lift heavier to get stronger. There's a couple days we're going to look at more bar velocity. How fast can they move the bar? Okay? Because that's going to make them more explosive. That's going to transition onto the onto the field, onto the court. And then the third part of that system is what's called the repetition method. So we take areas of the body that break down in most athletes, right? Hamstrings, low back, glutes, ankles, shoulders, chest, upper back, and we put that into the program from an injury preventative standpoint. So we're hitting all parameters, okay, for athletes. And then when you look at our speed systems, it's the exact same thing. Okay, our speed systems have days where they sprint really hard, okay, and then days where they change direction. So it's an all-encompassing program. So, typical questions I get when I talk to parents: what about for a soccer player? What about for a volleyball player? Everybody does the same program. This isn't a football program. It's not a softball program. It's not a volleyball program. Okay? Everybody does the same program. Our job, and the coach's job in the weight room, is to raise the physical parameters of your athletes. All right? Which means stronger, faster, more flexible, hopefully more durable. And then we hand them over to the coaches, all right? And they take the sport-specific part of it. Strength and conditioning is general physical prep, no matter what anybody says. What anybody wants to say on TikTok, Instagram, all that other stuff. Strength and conditioning or sports performance is physical prep for your athletes, so your coaches have a better product to practice them harder, okay? Practice them more in depth, so after they get really good at practice, then they go play the sport, and they're better at the sport. Everything works together, and that's how our systems work. And we can go up and down the line with some of the different sports and different schools that we work with. I think I look back, I think in the 11 years of Sports Advantage, we've worked with either a state champion athlete or a state champion team in pretty much every sport you can imagine in the state of Wisconsin. And I'll get the question, what about a swimmer? We had a 4-time state champion diver, did this system. Cross-country runners. We had a 98-pound female athlete from Edgewood that was a multi-state champion runner that still is running for the Olympic trials, that still uses our system. Okay? Ladies, Women's Basketball Player of the Year in 2017, played at Stanford, uses our system. We've had multiple Players of the Year in football use these systems. Okay? We try and keep it very basic, because at the end of the day, we're talking about 12 to 17-year-old kids. Okay? And so instead of throwing a lot of flash and dash, we want them to get really good at really basic stuff so they can come in, they know how to do it, they can do it at a very high level, all right, and have success. And so just kind of in closing, we teach 3 pillars for success, and I talked to the kids about this today, and these are things we teach at Sports Advantage all the time. And the first one is consistency. All right? We want the athletes to be consistent. And we've utilized the 2 days a week at multiple schools. If they get 2 workouts in a week for 4 years, that's 400 training sessions. They will be exponentially better athletes by doing that, even if it's for a half hour, 45 minutes. All right? So we want them to be consistent. And the coaches and staff want consistency. You know at home, you want to know what your kids are going to be like every day. Same with the coaches, right? The kids that play normally are the ones that are the most consistent. Okay? The second is relentless effort. And this is really important. This is something that's really big for me because effort isn't controllable. And we talked to the kids today about it. There's no excuse not to give 100% when it's 100% your choice. Okay? We had about 200 kids in here today. Demographics all over the place. Tall, short, bigger, smaller. Every one of them can control how hard they try. Everyone can control how hard they work. Do they finish through the line? Do they not skip reps? Do they do every exercise as hard as they can? Just doing that will make them exponentially better. So much better. All right, and then the last one is ownership. And this to me is I think, something that is not taught enough to young people. Right? There's always a reason why something didn't work out in their favor. Well, I got up late, built-in. That's one of the things we use with our athletes. We call them built-ins. Well, it's raining. It's raining for the other team. That's a built-in. Right? We teach them to own their results, both positively and negatively. This isn't like the 1980s where everything is we're screaming at the kids, things like that. If they come in, they're consistent, they work their tails off, we're going to love them up. Right? We want to celebrate that. All right? But we teach ownership at a very high level because at the end of the day, if you think about those three things I just talked about, the most successful people in the world are ultra consistent, they give great effort, and they take ownership for their actions. And ultimately, that's what high school athletics is all about. Very few of your kids are going to play college sports. The ones that do, that's awesome. Hopefully they go on as far as they can. But at the end of the day, the lessons that they learn from athletics will carry them on through the rest of their life. Trust me, I'm a business owner. When I see that a kid was in an athletic, I give him or her a little bit more of a look when hiring because I know they've grown up in a team atmosphere where they had to probably do things that are uncomfortable. And so that's really what the program is all about. More than happy to answer questions about this. I'm really excited to work with the school, work with the administration, work with the coaches. I'm going to tell you, your coaches have been awesome. They've been really asking a lot of great questions. I think they really want to take this thing to the next level. And so as a father myself, sometimes I understand as a parent, sometimes the things you see maybe you don't agree with. I would just say, give it a chance. Support the mission. Because these guys want what's best for your kids. So give them support, push the kids through, and just let's see what happens. There's no guarantees. That's the best part about athletics. The kids could work their tails off, and hopefully the records will be better, but there's never a guarantee with that. But there's no guarantees in life either. So anybody have any questions before I kind of give it back? Yes, ma'am.
So is there any consideration between their specific training program and maybe what that kind of sport is? If they have a competition coming up, then maybe their workout would be pretty for or whatever.
Great question. Yes. As we get into the in-season, there'll be in-season training versus out-of-season training. So there'll be, look at game schedules, things like that. Those are things that we communicate with the coaches on. One of the things that we do as far as like they take the class, okay? The one thing that I can't say this because I'm not an administrator or a teacher, so I don't know, but I think it provides a really hard scenario for a teacher if someone is not doing anything in a gym class, right? I mean, if they have a math test, they're going to take a math test on game day, but what we do is we give them things that are going to prep them for the game. Okay? Some jumps to kind of get their central nervous system set. Some banded work just to kind of get them loose and things like that. So there is consideration for the varsity athletes. Okay? The JV and freshman athletes are developmental. We want to continue to push them. That does two things. One, you don't win a state championship as a freshman if you're on the freshman team. Okay? The other thing it does is it teaches them the value of training in season, which is really important. What Jillian discussed was kind of the opposite of what I usually discuss. Typically, it's a lot of kids are training in the summer, right? It's when you have a lot of free time. It's when you can get a lot of the kids together. And then when they get to the in-season, that's when they stop training. And that's the worst thing that you can do for your athletes. Okay? That is, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons kids get hurt during the season. And I'll use a baseball pitcher as an example. Okay? There's all these velocity programs, all these other things for baseball players nowadays. Right? And a lot of them, typically in the winter, have off, so they'll do a lot of strength and conditioning in the winter, like 3 months worth. So they've done this velocity program. They've lifted. They've gotten bigger, stronger, faster, all this other stuff. They get in the in-season, they don't want to lift because they don't want to get tight or sore, which is a big fallacy, by the way. And then all of a sudden, okay, detraining will start to set in with these athletes. All right, after 10 days of not training. So after 10 to 14 days, this kid that went from maybe 84 to 90, okay, which I've seen happen, now his body has to work a lot harder to reach that velocity. So typically they overthrow, they try and generate more force by trying to muscle the ball, and that's when kids break down. And so the training in season is really important as far as an injury prevention. Not just, hey, we have to do this from a developmental standpoint, but just trying to keep them on the field. So a roundabout way of answering your question, yes, if there are games, okay, there will be certain things that we will look at to make sure that they're primed and ready to play. Whether they play on a Tuesday, a Friday, obviously we don't have school on Saturday, but things like that. Anything else? Well, I really look forward to working with your kids. I'll be around a little bit this summer just to check everything out. If you have any more questions, I'll be here. We've got a coaches meeting at 6, so I'm looking forward to that. But other than that, I'll let Jillian come back up. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
So thank you, Brian. We're super excited to be partnering with him. This is a major commitment from the district standpoint to bring in an outside resource that can really help us be more educated and more planful and intentful behind the strength and conditioning that we do here in the district. So what are our next steps? We can't do this without you. As an athletic director, as coaches, we can want all of this for your athletes, but we need you to be part of the change. These are kitchen table conversations where we need you as committed to this as we are. Because if we're not all in this together, we're not going to see the change. And so this concept of we are one, we truly believe this. We need you to be in this with us. I appreciate you taking the time out of your evenings to be here for this. I hope you go out and talk to those parents and guardians that aren't here and talk to them about what you learned and talk about this positively. Ask your questions of me, of your coaches. If you have questions for Brian, we'll get those answered. But we need you to be part of the change. This doesn't happen if you are not in it with us. And so what are things that we need you to do? We need you to prioritize these strength and conditioning workouts for your students. We need you to encourage them to get there and get them done. And that starts with this summer. So it's really exciting with their new weight room, getting ready. They're prepping it right now. We're excited for June 10th to roll around where people can get in there and start using it. We need you to encourage that. We need you to set that as a priority that they get this in. We also need you to recognize that if students aren't meeting the expectation of the minimum workouts, there are accountability measures in place and they will be enforced. So if you get a difficult phone call from me where so-and-so didn't meet the minimum requirements, they are not eligible to play next week, you need to understand that the expectations have been loud and clear to coaches, athletes, and to our community, that this is what we're doing in North Fond du Lac moving forward. And then obviously we want you to continue to encourage, come out to our games, ask your athletes what's happening in strength and conditioning, what are you working on? We want you to be a part of the progress and be there to celebrate with us in the end when we start becoming more competitive. So, this whole thing started with Be the Change. I know things might seem a little dark now with historically where we've been the last 10 or so years. And it's going to take time. This isn't going to change overnight. We don't start doing this next year and all of a sudden we're going to state championships next year. That's not going to happen, but it needs to start somewhere. Our students that are here now have an unbelievable opportunity to look back someday and say, I was part of North Fond du Lac when they started turning the corner. You know, and for our seniors next year, unfortunately, they won't be around long enough to see it, but they can still be a part of it. Our middle school students and our freshmen, really, if they stick with it and you work with us to make this a priority, we can start seeing a shift. And we can start improving those records, being competitive, where students go out and they believe that they can win. That's the mentality we want to create. So more will be shared with the code meeting at the end of July. I'll be getting that information out to you very soon. But if you have any questions, reach out to me, call me here at Horace Mann. You can email me. Happy to field any questions that you have at any time. There's no bad question to ask. If you have a concern, a wondering, ask it. Okay, we want to make sure that you feel comfortable and that you get excited with us on this because we are pumped and we can't wait to get this going. So, I'm going to put another plug. You've probably seen this in emails and on social media, but June 10th, our weight room is opening. We hope that you will encourage your student athletes to be there regularly because the time starts now. They really have an advantage to get in there, start this new programming, which will help them become stronger and better for their upcoming seasons next year. Let's fly. I'll stick around with Mr. Bott if you have any further questions for him. We have a few minutes before we start meeting with our coaches at 6 o'clock. Yep.
Although I was like 110% agree with that, is there different expectations that the coaches, because in reality, a lot of the coaching staff has done the same last 10 years. So our expectations changing with coaches as well.
Our coaches' expectations are changing.
What about students that are on our team that are not in our school?
So, like our co-op schools, like St. Mary Springs and Oakfield, they will still have to meet the 2 minimum workout requirement in order to be eligible. I'm working with their ADs and their schools on that. Any questions for Mr. Bott? While we have him here, it's great to have him in person. Any other questions for him? Thanks for being here. Have a great evening. Drive home safely.